Michael Schnell. Schnell! Michael Schnell. Your last name literally is Hurry. You've talked about the worst pain as well as the worst smell you've experienced. What is the worst sound you experienced on MythBusters? It's not cutting sheet metal with automatic shears. It's not fingers on a chalkboard. No. The sound for which I have an abiding hatred is the backup alarm of industrial equipment. Beep, 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 beep. First of all, there was no place on earth that we could be filming and not somehow hear one of those in the distance. Like, it pierces through everything. I know that's what it's supposed to do. And for those who work construction, know this, that oftentimes these alarms can be so loud, if you're near them, they can damage your hearing. And so I ask you, OSHA, can we have an upper limit to the volume of these? Because one of the things we got really good at on MythBusters was disabling the backup alarm of boom lifts and other things which we regularly needed because it was just so awful to be anywhere near them. We learned how to stuff the horn so it would make a smaller sound. We never did this permanently. We all returned everything in its proper condition. With the backup alarms of trucks, man. Because, yeah, they're horrendous. Totally horrendous. Then they can be piercingly, disturbingly loud. Shadowfax 1007 says, with the seemingly overnight success of MythBusters, what quality of life changes did it suddenly provide to you that were inaccessible in your personal and professional lives? Your question is based on a fallacy because our success, while MythBusters, the show, when it aired in January of 2003, did really well. I think we got like a 1.7 share. That meant that somewhere around 1.5 million people were actually watching that channel that night, which is a gigantic number for television today. Back then, there were a lot less channels. So while the show did well and Discovery decided almost immediately to pick up MythBusters and started making moves towards a season right away, literally, I think the show had been airing for less than 2 weeks when we got a call that they awarded season 1 and we're going to start filming in, I think, May or April or May. But the actual changes it had on our lives was super gradual. The financial change was gradual. We were getting paid somewhat in the beginning, but not any kind of thing approaching life-changing television money. That took 3 or 4 years before the show's success and our negotiating power and brain trust got us to actual television money. And it's it's an adversarial process. It's always going to be, but also the fact is that once you start making a lot of money for a large organization, it's incumbent on you to make sure you get some of that money back. I wasn't interested in being rich in a vacuum, but if I was making a ton of dough for a bunch of other people, I wanted some of that. And Jamie and I were able to achieve that, but it took time. As far as the notoriety, it also was a slow burn. I got recognized maybe 4 or 5 times during that first season of MythBusters. And so to be clear, the first 3 pilots aired in January of 2003. And then we started filming, I think actually earlier than April. I think we started filming in March. And they started delivering broadcast cuts. They started airing the show, I think, by the late spring of 2003. That's all look upable. But so only for the second half of the first season was the show actually on the air. And I remember the very first time I was recognized, it was in an electronics shop in San Rafael, which is still there. And I was purchasing something and a guy walked past and he looked in and he went, "You're on a show on Discovery." And I was like, "Yes." This is the first time anyone had ever recognized me. And he goes, this is exactly where I would have expected to find you. just great. It was very slow. It felt quite slow. The things that would happen later, like, you know, we had people at one point chase our car from a college event we'd done, all the 15-minute drive to our hotel. We saw this car full of people like waving at us and chasing our car. That was spooky. I mean, it turned out that they were just enthusiastic fans, but you know, who wants to be followed at any kind of speed in their car when they're on their way home from an event? All of that stuff took a long time. And in contrast, Jersey Shore, the show Jersey Shore, showed up early on in MythBusters' tenure. And those kids had to deal with a radically different kind of fame than we did. It's a different strata of fame that was, you know, saturating a different part of culture than we were. And I looked at how those guys were being treated, how they dealt with their stuff, and I just was so thankful that MythBusters' success was, in fact, proportionally so much slower. So, yeah, we had a lot of time to kind of ramp up and gear up for those kind of changes. And that being said, all those changes are hard and subtle, and life is weird in some unique ways when you have a television show that is doing well. And there's no roadmap for it. Everyone has to go through it on their own. I mean, if you've listened to one of the best podcasts is Smartless. I love that podcast. And one of the things I love about listening to those guys talk is they've all been around for so long. They've all sort of dealt with so much up and down disappointment and triumph, and, you know, they're seasoned professionals. And you feel the comfort they get from talking about how they got that seasoning. Because again, there is no roadmap. I remember specifically Paul Tuttle Jr. was an early consigliere for me. And we exchanged numbers at one of the first Discovery events we met at, and we just started corresponding. And it was mostly like, hey, what did you have to do when you negotiated this part? Or, hey, and you know, like, the network doesn't like talent talking to each other. That's totally clear. And there's a reason, because we were comparing notes about how to negotiate. Like, we were the first two alongside, well, the first of three. The first three, I think, big personality-based shows on Discovery were Monster Garage with Jesse James, American Chopper with the Tuttles, and MythBusters. And there were aspects to having that kind of show that was totally unique, and we had to compare notes. That is a useful thing, and I have since then been a consigliere to many young people starting out being on television, because I view that as a value I want to pass on. It was really nice to be able to call someone and check notes with them. Doesn't matter how big your boss is, they don't want you comparing notes with other employees, that's for sure. By the way, it is your legal right to discuss your salary with your coworkers in America. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.